Yo, what's going on? If you find yourself struggling with severe injuries or you notice that injuries are constantly persistent, they're always holding you back, and that you can't take that next step in terms of your health, your fitness, you're always in excruciating pain, well, most of the time, at least when you're training or going to the gym, but you just notice that you're being held back by your injuries. Trust me, I've been there. I've had clubfoot where my foot was born completely twisted, couldn't walk for 5 years, spent 14 years in active physiotherapy, got my foot completely cut up, little thumbs up there, but like as you can see, there's a completely cut up foot all the way up, like my Achilles doesn't even exist. And that's just one of the injuries that I've dealt with and overcome to do Ironmans, extreme bike racing. I have a 1:40 half marathon as well, so really fast running. So I didn't let that hold me back, as well as a lot of other things: scoliosis, 3 mild ankle sprains on my left foot, 2 broken arms, 4 stitches in my head, dislocated patella while playing basketball. So it's easy to say that I was a bit of a clumsy kid there, for sure. 6 stitches in my left knee when I fell on a construction site and I had like a jab of protruding metal just completely dive into my leg. And I've also dealt with 3 concussions and one, I forgot to add it on here, but thunderclap headaches as well, where I had to get a 12-inch needle that was like yay thick on my back to make sure that I wasn't having an aneurysm. So injuries wise, I think I've dealt with a good amount of them. Down here you can see this is when I dislocated my patella, and this is just 7 days after I dislocated it, and I was already back in the gym with a pretty healthy patella. This is just a benign bone tumor scar that I had, so don't be confused. I did not have to get surgery for my dislocated patella. I did for other things as well. But in this guide and this simple step instruction, I'm going to kind of show you the paradigm shift that I had in my head, and that helped me, not use these injuries to hold me back whatsoever in terms of my athletic endeavors, in terms of work, etc. So let's jump straight into it. The first thing is, obviously you're telling yourself this: I've been struggling with X injury for this many years. When is the pain going to go away? Because it seems like that pain is never going to go away. It seems like it's persisting. It's living with you. It's growing with you, which is weird. Shouldn't happen. It's always been bothering you. So how do you fix it? So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the thought processes first for, how we usually treat these injuries, or how society does from a medical standpoint. And then we're going to go over the paradigm shift and thought processes. And then I will show you the exact resources that you can use, as well as the exact prompts and action items and steps, so that you can implement exactly what the professionals know about your injury and how to fortify that on a daily basis. So let's dive into it. The first thing is to go to a doctor. Go to a physio, go to a doctor, go to a professional kin, which is just a physio, or a registered massage therapist. Somebody that has a degree in being able to articulate and directly target what aspect of your body is injured. Once we know that direct target, it's going to be a lot easier to, work with that information. Whereas if we just have a general area like knee or like ankle, it's going to be a lot more difficult to pinpoint and figure out exactly what's wrong. Heal. Rest, elevate, isolate for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the severity of the sprain. Obviously, listen to a doctor first. If you have a completely internal fractured bone, you're going to need to be sitting for a lot longer than that. But we're talking in the realms of like tendons, sprains, etc., just overall aches. And additionally, if you're struggling to identify, or if you don't know, what's hurting, here in our school, I've included a full breakdown in the health toolbox for being able to assess your injuries. So if we go down to injuries and restoration, this injury guide here, completely free, will show you the exact steps as to what's hurting, what it could be, what are some potential symptoms, what causes it, etc. So this entire, I'd say, legend just kind of shows you and helps you better identify a lot of these pain points and problems before you go to the doctor afterwards as well. So check that out if you're struggling to pinpoint exactly where the pain's coming from. But resting, isolating, when comfortable, slowly start moving that muscle right away. So it's even just opening it. If it's like a hand sprain and you're having trouble moving your hand, or your hand's fully injured, just doing some simple openings like that, or grabbing a pillow or a ball, just slowly start getting healthy blood flow back in that area, obviously without indulging in sharp pain, right? You want to avoid that sharp pain. You want to just make sure that it is tender, but it's not hyper uncomfortable. Now, this is where the tipping point of doom, as I call it, happens with most injuries. So what's normal is you'll isolate, you'll elevate, you'll stagnate, and then you'll return to normal, right? So we'll isolate the injury, we'll elevate it, We'll make sure that it stays elevated and it stays there, and then we're going to go right back to normal, right back to work. We'll just stay away from the gym. We'll stay away from the activities that we used to do for a couple months, convincing ourselves that, hey, looks like we can't do those things anymore. I'm injured. Now, that's absolutely not true. We can definitely refortify the areas that have been injured by rebuilding the base. So ignore this sort of thought processes. This is what has gotten us in this hole, and this is what we're going to avoid. So we're going to recentralize, rebalance, and we're going to actively move the area that is injured, right? This can happen with barefoot shoes that are super helpful by restabilizing the base. That's how I cleared up a lot of my patella dislocation within 1 week, just because I was wearing barefoot shoes at the time. I still am. These are feel grounds right here, and that way my feet were able to spread and blood was able to flow from the tips of my toes all the way up, and that really helped with solidifying that processy for the way blood flows in that sense. So rebuild the muscle with the most elementary movements. Start with ligaments, tendons, and then muscles. For anything lower body, it's vital that you do barefoot training and you do mobility in your barefoot shoes. For rebuilding the upper body, make sure that the side that you are working on is a one-sided lateral movement. Now you can see and notice some restorative things and exercises that you can do right here in the classroom aspect of it. If you go to Maxability, Notion link, and then here in our tracking template, you'll be able to see the entire mobility checklist that you're able to do, as well as the different muscle parts. Start with the static activities and then work your way up to dynamic. So potentially stacking like 3 statics at a time and then adding dynamics on, depending on obviously the muscle group, etc. So there's a ton of workouts in here that you can do that will help refortify, reinstate, and rebalance your mobility in those weak areas, with live examples as well. So that's in there for you to use. And then going back to it, for lower body, it's much more important to restabilize properly, because if you're putting yourself in like running shoes, for example, that are lifted or that have a tilt, that will immediately throw off the way the muscle and the injury kind of heals itself, because it will be constrained and it won't be in perfect alignment with the way the body is supposed to be. So what makes more sense? Isolate, elevate, back to the basics, fortify the causation. So make sure that you're tackling that causation on a daily basis, and targeted isolation with movements. These 2 steps, I'll show you how to do them. Super simple. All you have to do is just go to the Notion, Maxability, click on the Notion link. This will take us right here once again. And then here, once you go to see your RMT or your physio, etc., just take their notes. For example, these are notes from our client Nathan, so some of the things that he needs to work on. Run them through this ChatGPT prompt for strength training and running training workouts, and then that will give you and it will compile a mobility routine for you to follow and use, and it will look something like this. So if I go to Training Peaks here for our active clients, I'll show you what their mobility routines look like every day that are programmed before their workouts. So let's click on Michael. I know Michael has some tightness in his chest as well as his shoulders. So for example, thoracic internal hip rotations and glute mobility, completely prescribed based on what the RMT said for Michael's weaknesses when we do those assessments, right? You can also tackle your DEXA imbalances here. So for example, if your left side stronger than your right, let's say your left quad, some simple leg raises or potentially some left leaning QL stretches in that area will help fortify that weaker side, right? So hip mobility, shoulder mobility, really simple, like 10-15 minutes a day. You can cross-reference, and I show you how to cross-reference in the RMT blueprint. You cross-reference it with your workout for the day. If you see harsh in here, that's our RMT. Just put in your RMT's notes in there too. So super simple in the aspect of cross-referencing the training with the mobility, and then every day you're fortifying and working on a weaker muscle group to eventually get back in the swing of things when it comes to training. If you're really injured and you can't jump into training right away, totally fine. Just do the mobility and then slowly start stacking it with wins. Even swimming is a great idea. On top of that, steam room sauna will only help and will refortify everything for you in terms of just the step-by-step action items that you can be taking. Obviously, a big part of this is nutrition. Make sure that you are eating a whole foods balanced diet at all points while really increasing your electrolytes and your antioxidant count. You'll be able to see the nutritions in here. So depending on what type of injury you're dealing with. You obviously want to be in a bit of a surplus because your body's going to be in a state of repair. So potentially going with the gain meal plan here with the entire shopping list definitely will help with the additional fruits in your acai bowl as well as your yogurt. And even potentially swapping some of these things out. Honestly, this is great because you only have really heavy meals once a day with the red meat in there. So following this plan and throwing in some fruits as well as some antioxidants and nootropics in your diet will help immensely with speeding up your recovery as well. Again, all these assets are completely free. They're on our Notion link in our classroom under Maxability. You just click that Notion link and it'll take you through all of those things. And yeah, hopefully that gives you some more clarity as to, how I went from being immobile for 5 years of my life, spending 14 in active physiotherapy, breaking both arms, getting 4 stitches in my head, a couple more around my body, dislocating 5 or 6 things, and, still being able to put out really impressive numbers on the bike, on the runs, etc. And that's simply because, I figured out the right way to refortify my body. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's helpful, and I hope that it gives you proper hope and it shows you that you don't need to be limited by your injuries. And yeah, I hope you have a terrific day. All the best.